and welcome into this episode of Craze's Corner. We're going to be continuing our fantasy football award show. Previous show we recorded, you can find on the channel. That was fantasy football MVP and best value at ADP for this past season. So you can make sure go check out the previous show if you want to see those. But we are going to be dealing with some busts today, some guys that were drafted higher than they finished, as well as rookie of the year. So some rookies that we want to talk about. We talked about Laporta on the last show. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you go check that out. Again, it was fantasy football MVPs and best ADP value. And if you're coming to this show first, go check that one out. If you're coming from that one, we thank you, appreciate you for watching both shows. We hope you guys do enjoy, like we said, award show. We're going to start out with a bust. I'm going to start out swinging a guy I never liked, a guy I did not draft anywhere, and that's Dameon Pierce. Cordell Patterson too, but that's Dameon Pierce. He was good in his rookie year, but that was just due to the fact he was the only one there. He was getting outplayed by Devin Singletary, who spent the first 4 years of his career doing absolutely nothing in Buffalo. It kind of proves everything you should need to know. This is a guy who was drafted as the RB15, number 40th overall, and he ended up about 35 positions lower at the RB50 at the end of the season. He wasn't good at the beginning of the year. He was getting his snap percentages. He was like 54, 59, 59. And then it kind of fell off a cliff. He got hurt a little bit through the mid of the season, and then Devin Singletary just looked like the better back. From like week 4 on, Devin Singletary, you could tell he was the better back in Houston. Coaching staff saw that he was the one who got majority of the carries. He got majority of the work. So for me, a big bust. Hopefully you listened to me and did not draft him. I feel like consensus, we were lower on him as a show, except for Jeff. Jeff loved him some Dameon Pierce. But as a show, I feel like we were lower on him than consensus. Dameon Pierce is going to be my big bust of the year. What do you guys think for Dameon Pierce? Do you guys think he has any chance going forward to redeem any sort of fantasy value dynasty-wise, or will he just be a backup running back for the rest of his career? Zach, what do you think?
I think there's a guy that was dealing with a lot of some injuries this year, some lingering stuff. The one thing I guess that makes you optimistic about him is that he's still really young and he has, a quarterback like CJ Stroud. And sometimes those fringe running backs can benefit off of just like CJ Stroud throwing it to Tank Dell for 87 yards and falling down at the 1 yard line. And then a guy like Pierce comes in, but he hasn't really even been doing that either. And like you mentioned, Devin Singletary has clearly been the better back as far as the eye test. I did lock in already a couple prize picks early in the week because I like to try to get the over value as soon as possible. And one of them is I'm taking Devin Singletary overs here. And they've been hitting consistently, and Dameon Pierce bets have not been doing so hot. So, big unders if you can find them. That's how bad they are. I don't even give you the option to bet them. But, I like this one. I did take them in a couple redrafts as like that, try to get that RB2 locked in without drafting too high, but certainly hurt you more than he ever came close to helping you this season. And it's weird because he had that one game where he kind of like bounced back. I think he had like 2 touchdowns or something like that after Singletary taking over, and you're like, maybe he's back, and he wasn't. And the rest of the season he was just duds. So good pick, yeah.
Yeah, I think Singletary definitely outperformed him. I think that for Pierce, he's probably locked into the backup role. Whether or not it's Singletary next year for Houston, they could draft someone else to pair with Stroud and Collins. Or they could just bring in a free agent, go get a guy who gets cut, literally there's going to be a lot of running backs available. Maybe they go out, big spend, go get Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley. So I would probably stay away from him in Dynasty. I guess if you have him, hold him, wait to see what happens in the offseason, but I'm not really too excited. Anything you want to say, Will, about Dameon Pierce?
Yeah, I think that for the future, there's going to be so much running back movement this offseason. I don't know if we're really ready for how much movement. I think teams are really – running backs were complaining last year about free agency. They haven't seen anything yet. The value of running backs is just going to
– Yeah, Miles Sanders got paid $24 million last year. I don't think we're going to
Wow,
I
that's
don't
the
think we're going to
biggest
see it.
bust
Yeah.
I mean,
of,
look, you got Derek
contracts.
on the market. Singletary's going to be on the market out of Houston.
Mhm.
He's a free agent. Pollard. I mean, there's guys that teams are going to be able to get for $1 or $2 million a year. Whatever minimum is, maybe $3 million a year. If you get somebody $4 million, I'm not sure if Barkley and them are going to get big paydays. It's really going to be interesting to see what the running backs do as a collective group when they this year.
Yeah, I don't know exactly who's going to get paid where, but there'll definitely be some shakeup. I see a lot of committees coming together.
Yeah.
This offseason. So if you have one of those guys who's not in a committee in Dynasty, you're pretty lucky. I think that's kind of the way the NFL is going. Speaking of running backs by committee, Zach, who's a guy you think was one of the biggest busts? He happens to share a backfield with this guy I shall not name.
Wow, what's your beef with Tyler Algier? No, it's Bijan Robinson, and maybe statistically he's not the biggest bust, but there's this like undertone in fantasy that is unquantifiable, where you just have a feeling on a player and a vibe on a player, and every week you were just like, man, this sucks having Bijan on my team. Like he was, courted into the NFL as the next, best thing we've ever seen, and he's gonna wow the world. And he gave us glimmers of, little flashes of what he's able to do. But as a whole, I don't think you loved what you got from Bijan Robinson, and not sure anybody was able to get him any later than like the 107 or 108, depending on how sharp your league is. But it wasn't fun to have Bijan this year, and for all the hype, this is a hype bust, and really just a frustrating team in general to watch with the Atlanta Falcons and Zach's favorite coach Arthur Smith. Bijan, rough season.
Yeah, there was one reason I had no Bijan stocks this year, and you brought it up. His name is Arthur Smith. We saw it the year before with Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. Cordell Patterson was getting the ball. He had no business touching the ball. And then the fact that they already had Tyler Algier when they drafted Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier was great last year, set the rookie record for most yards in a season by a running back. And if I'm not mistaken, Bijan Robinson did not break that mark this year. He was, the snap share was there, but the rushing attempts weren't there that we would have expected. At least the targets were there in PPR. I think that Bijan Robinson is going to be great, but I just think it'll be a year or two down the road. Depends on how smart the Falcons get, and depends on how much longer Arthur Smith is their head coach.
But, I think Bijan and Charbonnet with the Seahawks, right? We all kind of groaned on draft day when they went to those teams.
Mm-hmm.
And for fantasy, to me, it raises a longer issue of
Arthur Smith.
Well, it's not just Arthur Smith. Every coach is going running back by a committee now. No one seems to want to commit to one running back. And because why honestly, why did Atlanta draft him? Why?
That's what they do.
Algiers is an RB1. He is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I kind of get Seattle, but I don't. Because their injury history with running back, they used that pick when they did. I don't know. I think coaches, we could have a fantasy huddle with NFL coaches. Hey guys, what are you doing? Right? You're killing the running game completely. You're just killing it.
Yeah, it's making.
Look at the 49ers don't play around. They went and got CMC, and they've never. Yeah, they have good backup running backs, but there's no mistake who their RB1 is.
And you haven't really heard anything from Elijah Mitchell all year until Christian McCaffrey got hurt.
Yeah. So they had a safety blanket, but they never fooled themselves as an organization that somehow will manage this and we'll do a 60-40 split and all that. And then when Bijan was on the field, they used him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Every time the kid touched the ball, you're like, Jesus, give him the ball. Just keep giving him the ball. Nope.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch. I said I didn't think Bijan broke Tyler Algiers rushing record for the Falcons, and he did not. He had 900 under 1,000 yards, and Bijan was 1,051. Or Tyler Algier was 1,051 2 years ago. So Tyler Algier is obviously better than Bijan Robinson, and Arthur Smith sucks. This is what we should take away. Do not draft any Atlanta Falcons next year.
So next year's draft, what in a 10-team league, 12-team league, when's the first running back off the board? 10? 11?
I'm taking McCaffrey 1.
Okay, I'm sorry. After McCaffrey, when's the next running back off the board? Is it in the first round?
Yeah, probably, but
I don't know. Next year is going to be very no RB strategy, 0 RB.
Yeah.
Because RB has just been brutal this year.
You'll be getting guys in the 5th round, 6th round that should have been maybe gone in the 2nd because people are going to go wide receiver heavy. They just are.
Yeah. I think we'll kind of see how it plays out. We're going to talk about another running back later who I think will sneak into the first round there. But Will, who's the guy you want to talk about for being a bust, staying at the running back position?
And I hate saying this because I actually really like him, and I think for fantasy sports, he's really a great ambassador. And if there was ever a fantasy football Hall of Fame, a real one, he should be in the first class. And that's Austin Ekeler. And I don't know if it was just a bad year by the team. They've had the same coaching for a couple of years. So, yeah, the coaching was an issue, but their offense just could not put it together every week. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you're asking me who the bust based on his draft position, you have to put Ekeler up there.
Yeah, he was RB2, RB3 in most drafts. Definitely didn't perform that way. Herbert was hurt, and I think that definitely hampered the entire offense. The only one you were happy with that you had on that team in that offense was Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
And he was amazing all season. But, yeah, outside of him, Mike Williams got hurt. Quinn Johnston was disappointing. Austin Ekeler just never really got it going. And we're never in a position to run the ball. He didn't quite look as explosive. He's getting up there in age as well.
Yeah.
So maybe he's going to be one of those guys who turns into like a third down back next year, whether he stays with the Chargers or he goes elsewhere. He's going to be another guy that's looking to get paid. But what exactly is getting paid going to mean? I definitely think Austin Ekeler was a bust. Zach, anything you want to say about Austin Ekeler?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I think there was that game where everyone started to realize that even when he was in the open field, he just did not have that speed like he used to. Mm-hmm. And that's just the natural when you hit a certain age, especially the running back position. But like Will said, he's just a great guy to root for. But man, I have him in the dynasty league that you're in, Zach, and I had a ton of offers to move him before the season started, and for sure regret not taking something because he really just did nothing for me all season. He was just a liability for most teams.
Yeah, it was definitely tough to have him. You were competing, so in your situation, it made sense to keep him. But yeah, definitely his value now is nothing compared to what you could have got at the beginning of the year. He definitely fall under the bust category. We want to hear about who you guys think was the biggest bust. Who is a guy you regret drafting? Is it Miles Sanders, who we didn't even get a chance to talk about? Absolute bust when it came to fantasy. It came to football, running the ball, just, existing. Miles Sanders was definitely a bust. We talked about 3 guys there. We want to know who you guys drafted that you regret drafting. It was Allen Robinson for me last year. I had lots of Allen Robinson stock. That guy, terrible. If you ever drafted Cordell Patterson, mistake. But we want you to let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. You can change the background. You can ask people questions, athletes, us. You can ask us questions. You can answer questions. People can ask you questions. You can post these press conferences to any social media platform of your choice. And you can go check it out. It's available on the Google Play and the App Store. And there we go. Like I said, we got rookies now. We talked about one rookie on the previous show. Maybe it'll be the next show, depending on which order you watch these shows in. We're going to be talking about some rookies of the year for fantasy. We talked about Bijan being a bust. We're going to talk about the other top running back in this class right now, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs. To me, he ended up being, I took him. Maybe he was your RB2. You were getting him end of the second. Maybe you had to come up a little bit more. Maybe he fell to the beginning of the third in your league. He's a guy who has returned on that value. Overall fantasy season-wise, RB8, RB9, depending on your format. The touchdowns were pretty good near the end of the season. Only had 3 games within the past since week 7 without a touchdown. So the touchdowns were there. You got the yards, the carries, the pass catching was a little bit more iffy than we were kind of expecting. Expected it to be a little bit more consistent, but it was definitely great if you had Jahmyr Gibbs. You got him at a point of value. He ended up being the best rookie running back when it came to fantasy value. He had 900 yards on the ground. And to me, the important thing was he had 5.4 yards per carry. He was explosive. He was fast. When he had the ball in his hands, he was hard to tackle. You couldn't get him down to the ground. He was running by guys. He was making guys miss. He got 52 receptions on 70 targets. So I think that's very, very good numbers. I traded up to get him in my rookie draft last year, and I could not have been happier with his performance. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs overall, rookie of the year, fantasy-wise, we talked about a guy last week who was number 1 in his position, or last episode, who was number 1 in his position. I think there's a couple more guys you could have definitely picked between. But for me, Jahmyr Gibbs was elite. He was sharing time. This is one of those running backs by committees with David Montgomery. But both guys were able to put up points. And for the most part, Gibbs was consistent. Again, fantasy championships was his worst week all season. He ended up being the RB47, but before that, it was RB3, 14, 7, 2, 2, 3. Like, he was being fairly consistent. So for me, what do you guys think about Jahmyr Gibbs? Were you happy with his performance? Do you expect him to continue to grow on that going into next year, even though Montgomery's still going to be there?
Yep, he's got the most. The eye test. He's super duper elite. Like he's like you get that Alvin Kamara comparison, and I don't know if that's necessarily the trajectory of his career. And Kamara is a little bit more of a thicker build of a player, but that straight like explosiveness is rare, and I think Gibbs is going to be just one of those perennial superstars at the running back position. He's on the perfect team for it. Clearly, they love running backs. Every year, a Lions running back is fantasy relevant, and this year, both of them were. Everyone made that analogy of this is going to be the next Jamal Williams and a good version of DeAndre Swift. Well, you got that times 10, and that's the reason why the Lions are a competitor this year and at the top of the NFL rankings. So Jahmyr Gibbs has been great, and you got him as a great draft day value. I remember putting out a poll who has a better season, Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs maybe got 2 votes out of 25, something like that. You know what I mean? So clearly no one was expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to be the better running back.
Mm-hmm. Will, what do you think about Jahmyr Gibbs? He plays in your division, NFC North.
Yeah, I mean I think he's their RB1 next year at some point. And the thing that scares me going forward for him is Montgomery will steal touchdowns from him.
Yeah.
In short yardage. But look, Gibbs, if you have him, keep him. He's good you got a good 5-6 year window with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is definitely a little bit on the smaller side. So injuries might be a concern dynasty-wise, but we said, as Zach said, he passed the eye test. He probably looked like, with the ball in his hands, if not the best, maybe the second best running back in the league behind Christian McCaffrey with the ball. And I think he's probably pretty close in that way, where he was explosive, he was quick, he was shifty. He kind of was able to do everything that you saw him do in college. He was able to do at the NFL level. And I think that he made all of the draft experts and everything that were saying the Lions made a terrible pick. Maybe it still wasn't the best pick at 12, but he looked like an amazing talent. That's what team needed.
Lions went and got the running back they needed.
Yeah, that's what they did.
Fall for that.
a guy they needed, a guy who helped them. Without Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't think this team would be the same this year. So I think they made a good trade there. Zach, the other guy I was debating between Gibbs mainly, these were the first two that came to my mind when I heard the award. Who's the guy you want to say is the rookie of the year?
It means no worries for the rest of your days, and that's a Puka Akuna Matata. So I'm going with Puka Nakua, man. I mean, just great to watch him. Just another guy, the eye test thing, where like you see him like on the sideline or like suiting up, and you're like who's this like celebrity stepping in to like play a game, like I mean, as like a commercial or something. Then you see him on the field. And it looks like a guy that's been in training camp with Cooper Kupp, a guy that's been in a full off season with Matthew Stafford as his quarterback. And I mean, if you had him in the early part of the season, scooped him off of waiver wires, you probably smoked everyone you played the next 4 games straight. So he gave you that nice like bump to get you, up in the standings throughout the earlier part of the season, and he was rather consistent even when Cooper Kupp came back. I'm pretty sure he's set either Rams records for receiving yards or some, I don't know.
NFL.
It was the NFL?
Rookie
receiving, right? Yeah. So,
I don't know if he's broke it or maybe he's like a couple catches away or whatever.
Right.
He's right there.
Yep. So he'll forever be, a part of the game with those kind of records as far as just great rookie performances. And no way Puka Nakua was drafted, right? There's not a single league where he was drafted. And what about Dynasty? Like I'd imagine
he was like third round. Yeah.
So he's most likely gonna win. Did you think he wins offensive rookie of the year in the NFL? AP voting?
I think it's between Puka and Will's guy, who we'll talk about in a bit here. I think it's between those two guys, really. But yeah, Puka, he put up amazing numbers. He's the wide receiver 5 on the season, and he only had 5 touchdowns. So to only have 5 touchdowns and have the amount of targets, receptions, and yardage, he's already over 100 receptions on 154 targets, 1,450 yards, 5 touchdowns. If he had around what would be average for a top 5 wide receiver to have, which would probably be around that 7 to 9 touchdown range, he would have been probably the wide receiver 1. Like, it's a crazy year for him. You said it helped him when Cooper Kupp wasn't on the field to start the season. But you can tell he's learned so much from Cooper Kupp and having Matthew Stafford there to help him. He was probably the steal of the NFL draft. When you look at guys who were drafted last year and what they returned on value so far.
Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, Quentin Johnston went, 21st overall, and Puka Nakua went in the 5th round.
Yep. Womp, womp.
Puka looked great. I think he's definitely in consideration for actual offensive rookie of the year. Will, anything you want to add about Puka before we move on to the guy who we think will be competing with him for that?
Yeah, I was just looking at his contract. $900,000 next year, 1.03 the following year, 1.1. Woo!
Playoff push. Win now mode when you got that kind of contract.
Oh my God, the Rams are a fortunate team.
Yeah, but they're paying Cooper Kupp lots of money to make up for that.
Yeah, and just as Kupp 3 years ago, Kupp should be.
Yeah, I think going into next year, Puka, if they both play 17 games, will probably have more targets and catches than Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp's.
It'll be interesting to see how defensive coordinators adapt to him.
This is assuming Matthew Stafford's still there in LA. If Stafford retires, then I don't want either. I don't want either.
Chains, Kirko.
Yeah, if they get a guy like Kirk Cousins, then that'd be great. Kirk Cousins with Nakua and Cooper Kupp.
Carson Wentz.
Hey, he's starting Sunday.
Yeah, they're resting their starters, right?
Yeah, there. I don't know if Puka will play just to get that rookie record. I don't know exactly if he has it or not yet. but I do know it's close. But Will, we got one more guy to talk about, one more rookie, a guy who also happens, last show or next show you're going to watch, we're talking about a lot of guys who are on Zach's Dynasty roster. This show seems to be a lot of guys that I got on my Dynasty roster when it comes to these rookies. Almost like I had like 13 rookie picks in this past draft. But Will, who do you want to talk about for rookie?
CJ Stroud. I mean, look, hardest position in the league. Had no love coming in, honestly. Right?
I didn't believe in him.
Nobody.
I to be fair, I have QB1, but I was.
Even if you had him in QB1 in the rookie in the draft, there still weren't people high on him. Right. And so for him, good for him. Good for him going out there and just putting up the numbers he did consistently. Got hurt, but he's putting up numbers and probably taking them to the playoffs, right? So, holy shit. Excuse my bluntness, but rookie quarterback, NFL, with a team that nobody gave a lot of chance to, and he takes them to the playoffs, and he puts up the numbers he's putting up in fantasy?
Yeah. Woo. And he was able to support, 2 wide receiver ones when they were playing Tank Dell and Nico.
One a rookie who, if Tank Dell doesn't get hurt, he's in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had multiple guys there. Noah Brown was putting up wide receiver 1 weeks with CJ Stroud throwing him the ball. If he didn't get hurt, I think he'd probably be a shoe-in for Offensive Rookie of the Year when it comes to the NFL awards because he's a quarterback, even though Puka's had such an amazing season. Now that he did get hurt, I think it's probably 50-50 which one actually wins the award. I'm not sure which direction these NFL voters are going to go. I'd probably pick Puka just due to the historic fact of everything that he's done. But I definitely get where you're coming from. CJ Stroud had an amazing season. He had a 5-touchdown game in a comeback game where they ended up having multiple what could have been game-winning drives.
And so that's like you guys were saying about Puka. How often was he drafted, if at all? But for someone that was drafted probably late rounds of your draft, especially in redraft leagues, you got to steal. And if you went heavy with other roster positions thinking, maybe I'll hit. This might have been the difference between winning your championship and not where you picked him. So that's kind of why I went with him as fantasy MVP because he probably pushed teams over the top who took a chance on him late in their drafts.
Yeah, he would have got people to the playoffs. He wouldn't have won them any playoff games because he was hurt and then didn't do great in the final. But if you had him during the regular season, he finished as the QB 13. And he missed 3.
And that's Kirk Cousins. That's Kirk Cousins level right there, right?
Yeah, that's 13. Good. 2 touchdowns a game was pretty much what he was doing consistently, except for when he played the Jets and Carolina and Baltimore. So 3 really tough defenses. The only times he didn't get, really good scores. Outside of that, he was scoring 20 to 30 points a week. So if you drafted him, if you picked him up off waivers, maybe he was available. You should have been very happy with your pick. We have now discussed Sam Laporta on the next show or the show you just watched. He was also tight end 1, definitely a great rookie to have. We didn't make it through this show without talking about Cordell Patterson, but what do you expect when the Atlanta Falcons come up? But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Like I said,
one last question: McCarthy or Penix Monday?
Oh, go Big Blue, baby. We're going to smoke them.
Come on, Huskies. Let's go, Huskies.
Oh, goodness.
I'm cheering for Washington.
I'm a Pac-12 guy. I mean, come on.
Cheering for Washington, but Michigan will probably win. They got a better defense.
Michigan's always they've always been my favorite team since Charles Woodson. So I'll be voting for Big Blue, but I'll be drafting Michael Penix in Dynasty. No, I will not be. Blake Corum.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
that
game last week, fantasy owners are going to be in Dynasty. I want Corum.
Yeah, if he ends up declaring for the draft, he'll be
is the next Kyron.
Probably the top running back of this draft.
At the same person.
In the 3rd round.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So there we go. We end the show there. Like I said, go watch the previous show, or if you haven't seen it already, which was NFL awards for fantasy football MVP. and value picks based on their ADP. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. We will be back next week with some more fantasy football content. We're going to go look over some of our preseason predictions, talk about some that we made that were really good. Some maybe didn't quite go the way we thought they were going to, but we're going to kind of analyze those and see why they didn't. So you're going to make sure you stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, sir. Go Bills.